10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll make a few little introductions to the group that we have talking here today, and then we'll run through a little bit of a brief of our presentation next week, and then hopefully you join us next week in Palm Springs. So my name is Casey Scheidel, president of Iowa Sports Turf, based out of Des Moines, Iowa. A construction and maintenance company that's provides services in the Iowa to Midwest region. Joining me with me on the panel today and for our talk next week is Sam Titchener. Sam is a sports construction project manager for Colony Landscapes. Mark Baginski, landscape architect for Verde Design out of the California state. And also Nick McKenna. Nick McKenna, director of fields for Texas A&M University. So this is a really good group of people, very specific to the sports field, sports facility, building um, building part of the whole process. I was trying to say. So we assembled a panel specifically to touch on building a sports field with ground managers in mind. So Mark's experience specifically can shed light from the design standpoint. Sam and his group specifically on the construction, and then bringing in somebody like Nick McKenna, that is the end user, the person maintaining it, and how we integrate the sports field manager into these decisions that are made. So we have a brief preview here of our presentation next week, and we'll run through that. So first, I'll have Mark jump in and talk a little bit about pre-design.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So, I think the overarching message we want to talk about when we talk about a new project and the grounds manager is you really have to fight for your seat at the table and make sure that you're involved in the process from the beginning. So that I think is our overarching message. With most projects, the four bullet points here are pretty typical of budget and schedule are always a critical component to a successful project. But one of the things that we see where projects can fall short is really understanding what your goals and objectives are. A lot of times it's just we need a new football stadium, we need a new baseball field or softball field, and there's other goals and objectives from a ground manager standpoint that come along with something that's just new, and whether that's the type of irrigation system, soil profiles, et cetera. And I think this is the opportunity in the early stages for those goals to be identified, because that's what's going to make you successful in the end. And then I think the other aspect of it is this is the opportunity where you really want to put a list together, and that list really should include all of your wants and needs. Obviously, the needs are the ones that we want to make non-negotiable, and then the wants are the things that if we can manage to get those in, but we know what they are up front, it makes it a lot easier for us to manage budget throughout that design process. So that's a little taste of what we'll talk about there. Go to that next slide. And then the other aspect of this is really talking about how do you go about planning for your input, and a lot of it has to do with doing your homework internally. What do I have? What's working? What doesn't work? What are the problems? Whether it's infrastructurally, operationally, now's a good time to remedy some of those items. Additionally, it's also a good time to reach out to your peer group, other facilities, and to understand what's happening, what are the trends, what's the direction other folks are moving, so that you're prepared to have a very open-minded discussion, and hopefully help you to define the way you want your facility to turn out. The other aspect of this is really about the participation throughout the process. Most designers really, I hear this all the time, like nobody wants to listen to me, uh, or you have people that are willing to take the information that's given and then be able to regurgitate that back to you as the client and basically say, here are the things that you brought to us as whether they're infrastructural needs or design parameters, but they all get tracked and recorded and in a way where, we like to use a document we call it a design log, where whenever questions get brought up or information is brought to us, we write it down on a sheet, and then we track that to ensure that it's being incorporated or addressed in some fashion throughout the project. And these have been around for forever. This is not any proprietary information here, but I think from your perspective, having that list, sharing it with the design team is really important, and that will also carry through into construction, because depending on your delivery method, the design team and the ownership group is all in one meeting, and then if project bids, and now you're introducing a third party to it, and so they don't have the knowledge of all the discussions and the intention behind the drawings, which is, I think, one of the other key parts to success. And then also at this time is where we want to talk a little bit more about clarity, whether it's in the design or in the specifications, that ensures those things that you want and desire, down to, soil types and, like I mentioned earlier, irrigation, things like that. All of that stuff can be brought into the plans and specifications, as long as we all are on the same page and understand that.
Okay, yeah, and then just to kind of give you an overview of the construction process, or I guess what we're going to talk about for the construction phase. So now we take what Mark has designed, hopefully what he's designed with your input, and then we pick it up. So like when I come into a project, I get a set of plans, I bid on it, and then if I win the job, now this set of plans becomes basically, the gospel for what we're going to do at your facility. So I guess the biggest thing that from a construction side that I would like to pass on is just that we'll go more in depth in, but like building the relationship between the groundskeeper, turf manager, and the contractor that's doing the job, whether that's with, you're going to want a relationship with the foreman, you're going to want a relationship because the foreman is the one that's executing the job, right? So like my job is to set everything up so that the foreman has everything he needs, but you're going to interact a lot with the foreman, but also from a management side, you're going to interact with the project management team. And I guess the biggest message there is building that relationship early so that you understand the players involved. And then that way, as you go into the construction process, you can feel like you have the comfort to be involved the right amount so that everyone's comfortable. The most important thing, I guess, during the construction process would be like you guys getting the outcome that you want, right? So you can have this grandiose plan, but if it's not executed correctly, then you're going to be stuck with something that doesn't perform. And in your industry, if you get stuck with something that doesn't perform, it'll make your job so much harder. So I guess I would spend a bulk of it talking about how you can make sure that the contractor performs, and then the relationships that need to be built. And then you can kind of transition into from that. Now that you have that established, we're going to transition more into the records that should be kept, the testing that should be done, the things that you should keep your eye on, the actual execution, the performance, the documentation that you need to do. I think you can change the slide now. But yeah, I guess this is kind of more transitioning into what Nick will talk about. But so there is a good overlap there because basically if we all the so Nick can give you the perspective of an actual having gone through these projects of the records that need to be kept and just the things that you really should focus on. And so he and I are going to kind of blend together on that, just to make sure that when you get done with the project, you have a full understanding of the field that was built for you, and good records of everything. And then I'll kind of hand it over to Nick, and he can talk more about from his perspective during a project, how he would handle that.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on a point. Like, there's going to be overlapping components in this presentation. Like, each one of us will actually have kind of an area of focus in each phase of this, whether it's the pre-design and the bid, into the construction process, all the way through this post-construction phase. And that's kind of the big important message, I think, here is that from a field manager's perspective, is to try and get involved on every aspect of it from beginning until end. And in doing so, it's going to create and make this process much smoother and much more efficient for all parties. Everybody from Mark in his design phase, to Sam when you're building it, to me as the end user. So, speaking from Sam talked about all the records and things that we're going to go more into depth into, like, here are the specific areas, the test results that you want to pay attention to, and how you're verifying those for accuracy, and making sure we're holding those accountable to meet the specification, are all going to be important aspects of it at the end of the day. And then I think, to wrap up our conversation, is we'll talk about kind of the post construction aspect of everything, and making sure that there's already a plan in place for when the construction is done. Whether that's, a lot of contracts have a 30-day or a 60-day grow-in period required through the contractor. Whether that's something you want, or whether it's, for me, a lot of times I just want to take it over, because I would rather just go ahead and start implementing my processes and practices. But you have to make sure the contractor's okay with that, because at the end of the day, they're still going to be held accountable. So, like, even if my plan fails, they're going to be held accountable for it. So you got to make sure you're on the same page from that standpoint with the sports field constructor and the contracting company. And a lot of times, in my experience, we've done kind of a hybrid where I'll be like, hey, like, we'll do this if y'all will cover this for the grow-in period. So there's different accommodations that can be made throughout that process, but you want to make sure you have that plan in place and that everybody's on the same page, so that when you get to that phase, it's not everybody asking questions, pointing fingers, and that you can continue just basically seamlessly working through that process and grow in your facility and field, so that it's ready to go when you're ready to open it. And so that's all those other activities, everything from, the fertility program to what cultural practices, how often it's going to be mowed, what heights, who's controlling the irrigation, what's the frequency of it. All of those things have to be considered and accounted for in that plan. And then that all translates into that final question there of, like, when can we open this? For us, a lot of times, in my experience, a lot of times it's like, this is when I have to be able to open it. So a lot of times that actually dictates some of our timelines with the construction process. Some of us actually get the option to say, like, okay, we finished the project. Now we're not going to allow anybody on it for X number of weeks. But making sure that conversation is had, that there's a good understanding, and obviously there's factors that can influence that. In my experience, the best laid plans rarely work out perfectly. So a lot of times you have to be flexible and adaptable and understanding, like, there's going to be holdups, or there's going to be things that maybe go wrong that are going to have to potentially push that timeline. Or you're going to have to be able to adapt to how that timeline might change. So you might go from having a 8-week grow into, okay, now you're down to 6. Is that still acceptable? But basically having those clear lines of communications and plans in place, so that you know what the end usage is going to be, when you're going to open it, and what the expectation for that is. And then I think the big takeaway from that is, at the end of all of it, you want to evaluate and learn from it. Look at the whole project from start to finish, determine, what went well, what didn't, what did I like, what didn't I like, and how would I change those things or do them differently, if given the opportunity again in the future. And that's everything from that pre-design. I've had projects where I basically walked into them after all the design stuff was done, and so I've kind of had to adapt and learn and on the curve and fly from those. And then I've had some where, I've been involved from that very first step and then been able to provide my input. And I think that's very valuable from an end user perspective, being able to take those lessons, the good and the bad from both of it, evaluate, and then use that to help benefit yourself for the next project down the line. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, team here. I think I'm gonna stop sharing the presentation. We'll break it back out to the larger group here and ask if there's any quick questions here. We have a few more minutes. We can hope to answer some of that, or if there's something specifically that you would want us to discuss, or some of our experience from each member of our panel of team of people here. Go ahead and ask that now. I'm not seeing any or no takers for today. Well, good. So I hope you'll all join us next week in Palm Springs. Talk about this. I think we have a really good group of people here with an immense amount of experience through the whole process that have specifically worked on athletic field projects. I mean, that's why we're doing this group discussion here for next week, and we certainly look forward to it and look forward to seeing you in Palm Springs next week. So with that being said, see you next week.
Thank you,
Thank
panel.
you, guys.
Everyone.
Thank you.